estamos aquí, como yo les prometí, en la conferencia justamente del Money Show, donde efectivamente en la edición que tenemos en Miami hemos tenido la oportunidad de traer una cantidad de, digamos, personajes que están en todos los medios de comunicación en inglés. Y hoy nos tocó el turno de traer indudablemente a Dan Ives, quien es amigo y quien efectivamente es uno de los mejores analistas que hay en tecnología. Dan, we're very happy to have you here at the Tribune of Negocios TV. So now I think the first question is, what do you think about the market now that it's kind of a stopping mode for the tariff and President Trump is just traveling to the Middle East?
I mean, it was a pivotal week. Look, if you go back this weekend, that was a dream scenario for the market. De-escalation, China, 30%, probably gets to call it 15, 20% when it's all said and done. And then Middle East, really open, the AI revolution now coming to the Middle East. So look, to me, after some dark days early on in April, I believe new highs for tech could be on the horizon in 2025 as this AI revolution plays out.
Listen, one of the things that I think is important for us to understand, and you're an expert on that, is the sensitive of this tech with interest rates. We have some numbers telling us that the inflation may be coming for a while, but you and I were discussing off the cameras that perhaps in the month of May and June, we're going to see a hike in terms of inflation. And then you see the 10-year at around 450 or so. What do you think will be the scenario for the tech if we don't get the cuts that we are forecasting for 2025, the worst case scenario in terms of interest rate, keeping here or going a little bit higher for NVIDIA, for Palantir?
Look, the tariff policy is uncertain because the reality is even 30% in terms of China, that's still high. And there's that's price increases to the average U.S. consumer. You're going to have price increases, CPI, PPI readings that would be higher in the next, call it, few months. Look, Fed right now, their hands are tied. They can't do anything until probably at least later this year. So the 10-year is basically factoring in saying, look, some higher inflation's coming in the next, call it, 2, 3, 4 months. Look, I'm not concerned because I think if you ultimately view this as just a transitionary period and then you get the cuts later in the year, that's a bullish scenario for tech.
Listen, lo que le estoy preguntando a él, I'm going to tell them en español, es, él está observando que la inflación inclusive puede subir en los próximos 2 o 3 meses, sin embargo, a pesar de todo esto sigue positivo, sin embargo también nos dice que respecto a las tarifas sigue siendo alto. So where do you see opportunities in terms of the tech? We were talking about Palantir and NVIDIA. Why don't you tell us a little bit what the audience should do with Palantir and NVIDIA at these levels, at least?
I mean, I believe Palantir is going to be $1 trillion market cap in the next 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's my view, when you think about the AI revolution and the trillions that's going to be spent, we're just in the beginning stages. It's led by Godfather of AI, Jensen, NVIDIA. But you look at the hyperscalers, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet. I think Palantir continues to be our best play from a software perspective. Names like Salesforce.com is another one. And then I think Tesla is the autonomous robotics play in terms of physical AI, because you have to view this as a decade-long theme. And we believe we're going to be looking at a tech market where not just new all-time highs, but I think now you start to get on a trajectory. Tech stocks could be up another 25, 30% over the next year.
One of the things that captured my attention, and I think this was this week, is that you guys from Wedbush were talking about the cybersecurity and potentially that companies have to pay more and more attention because it might be easier for hackers to actually, contaminate systems and get into the important infrastructure of bigger companies. What do you think we should play that in terms of the market, the exposure to cybersecurity companies? What are your calls there, please?
I mean, as more data moves to the cloud, and you talk about AI use cases, that's exposure. That exposure, how do you protect it with cybersecurity? That's why names like CyberArk, Palo Alto, Zscaler, CrowdStrike, names like Checkpoint as well, those are going to be core ways to play. I mean, look, I think it's a golden age for cybersecurity. And I think also cybersecurity is going to be a second, third derivative beneficiary of the AI revolution.
With regards of the data centers, it's been there a lot of bigger companies like Blackstone buying data centers, and you explained us in our last interview everything about the training part of potentially those systems, and then go to inference later on. Where do you think that might work in terms of the opportunity for these data centers to bright in the future? Because people is worried about the capex and all those stuff with NVIDIA and other companies. Explain to us.
But again, like 325 billion of capex for tech, it's 100 billion increase year over year. And if you go into next year, yeah, maybe like the growth could actually come down a bit from a growth perspective, going 26, 27. But you only have 4% of U.S. enterprises that have gone down the AI path. Sovereign hasn't gone into it. Well, so my view is like there's more data centers under construction today than active data centers. That's why it's a golden sort of moment for the tech world.
Listen, the other question now to finish and wrap up is, where do you see the S&P at the end of 2025? A lot of people are raising their target again after coming and cutting that target like a couple of months ago, or actually a month ago when the tariff. Where do you think the S&P might go from here? I think we're around 6,000, 5,900.
I think 6,500 to 7,000 is ultimately, depending on mid to bull case, where you're going to end up. I mean, Brian Belsky and others have talked maybe, it could be 6,100 to 6,500. Look, the reality is that if it's tariff driven, if you have de-escalation on tariffs, you get trade deals on the table, India, South Korea, Vietnam, then it's off to the races. But it's trade deal dependent from Trump administration.
We're very happy to have you. Estamos muy contentos de tener a Dan. Lo vamos a seguir teniendo. Dan, you're going to keep coming to speak with us, to the audience in Español for Negocios TV, and probably we're going to get him from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange very soon. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you, guys.